I'm Caleb Giddings from Taurus Holdings Incorporated, and I have products here from all three of the brands that fall under our umbrella: Taurus USA, Rossi USA, and Heritage Manufacturing. And today we're going to be talking about handgun hunting cartridges. So, first off, let's talk a little bit about what different things you can hunt with a handgun. And the answer is pretty much everything. I watched a TV show a few years back that described handgun hunting as just like bow hunting, except louder. I wish I could remember the name of the show, but that stuck with me. And it's very true because you have to get pretty close to be able to use a handgun on a lot of different game animals. But people have hunted everything with handguns. My boss, the CEO of our company, killed a Cape Buffalo with one of our revolvers, the Taurus Raging Hunter in 460 Magnum. It's a fantastic story, by the way. If you want to listen to it, go do a Google search for Brett Voorhees Buffalo and it'll pop up. There's been a lot of interviews and stuff about it. But my first exposure to handgun hunting came when I was very, very young, and it was with a .22 revolver. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with small game and what cartridges are appropriate for small game for handgun hunting. The obvious answer, the obvious first answer is .22 long rifle. .22 long rifle has probably killed more things that walk on this planet and probably quite a few things that they probably shouldn't have shot with it. But .22 long rifle is the perfect small game hunting cartridge because it doesn't excessively damage the thing that you're shooting, but it usually has enough power to finish it. Now, there's an upper end of things that you should be shooting with a .22, especially out of a handgun. .22 long rifle is perfectly appropriate for small game up to woodchucks, small foxes, things like that. I personally would not use a .22 long rifle on anything that is coyote sized or larger. And that's why one of the things I really appreciate about the Heritage Rough Rider is that it comes with a .22 Magnum cylinder. As a matter of fact, if I was going to get a single action revolver for small game hunting, it would be this one. Like literally this one that I am holding in my hands, the Heritage Rough Rider 9-shot 6-inch with fiber optic sights. And the reason for that is I get 9 rounds, which is more than 6, so that's nice. It has the .22 Magnum cylinder, and these sights are really, really good. I'm able to pick them up quickly, which means I'll be able to get accurate shots on whatever it is I'm going after, whether it's squirrels or rabbits or other things that are appropriate for small game. Now, when you're selecting a cartridge for your .22, especially with .22 Magnum, bullet selection does actually matter. I know people who use .22 mag on squirrels, and it sort of has an explosive effect if you're using some of the ballistic tipped hollow points. And if you're actually trying to save parts of that squirrel for anything, whether you want to make, I don't know, mittens out of squirrel fur, I'm not sure what people do with squirrels, but you probably don't want to use something that's got a ballistic tip. The flip side is if you're just looking for rodent or varmint elimination and you want the most efficient kill possible, the ballistic tip .22 mag cartridges are fantastic for this. .22 mag from a handgun is probably going to be appropriate for things up to about small coyotes. I wouldn't go any larger than that, and then even on a small coyote, shot placement is going to be critical. To be fair, shot placement is going to be critical with any sort of handgun hunting. Handguns are lower velocity and do less terminal damage than rifle cartridges. Even in the case of the .22 Magnum, a .22 Magnum out of a rifle is going to be much more effective than a .22 Magnum out of a handgun. So your shot placement is critical. And again, that's why something like this Heritage Rough Rider makes so much sense, because with its single action trigger, with its good sights, you can actually get a very, very clean, very, very smooth trigger press, which is going to allow you to put the most accurate round on target possible. I think for me, .22 Magnum, probably the perfect small game cartridge, especially out of a revolver. Now let's move up to medium-sized game. What is medium-sized game? I don't actually know. Right? There's all these words, like everyone has a pretty good idea of what small game is. Rabbits, squirrels, things like that. We all kind of know where, coyotes kind of considered small game. But what's medium-sized game? I really have no idea, because to me, medium-sized game is something like larger coyotes, American white-tailed deer, stuff that's in that sort of size range. And that's where the 357 Magnum, like this RM66 from Rossi USA, is a really good choice. The cool thing about 357 Magnum is you have an incredibly wide range of bullet weights and velocities that you can get out of a 6-inch gun like this. The original inventors of the 357 Magnum used it to kill all sorts of animals during their marketing and promotional tour for it, including grizzly bears, which I would not use a 357 Magnum on a grizzly bear in 2024 or whatever year you happen to be watching this, but it has been done. And if you use some of the heavier bullet weights, like a 200 grain hard cast or something like that, it's on the limits of what most people would consider acceptable. But to me, the 357 Magnum is sort of your ideal close to medium range deer-sized game cartridge. Deer, wild hogs, things like that. Out of a 6-inch barrel, you can get really good velocities, and with thoughtful bullet selection, this thing will drop a whitetail in its tracks. And you don't have to believe me, because the 357 Magnum has taken whitetail. It's taken a considerable number of wild hogs, deer, and other game. So if I was only going to get one hunting cartridge, it would probably be 357 Magnum or a gun chambered in 357 Magnum, because I can go all the way up the power scale to those 200 grain hard cast bullets we've talked about, or I can go all the way down the power scale to very light loaded 38 specials if I wanted to shoot small game with it. So that's why it's sort of like the jack of all trades but master of none of handgun hunting rounds, because you can do everything, almost everything within reason with it, but it's not the best at everything, right? The 22 mag, in my opinion, is better for small game. And then if you're talking about big game, well, that's where the 44 comes into play. To me, there is no better big game cartridge than the 44 Magnum. Are there more powerful handgun cartridges? Yes, absolutely. And we make Taurus Raging Hunters for that cartridge. You have the 454 Casull, you have the 460 Magnum, you have the 500 Magnum. All of those cartridges are far more powerful than the 44 Magnum, but, and this is just me saying this, all of those cartridges were born after the 44 Magnum, and they were born after the 44 Magnum to do things that had already been done with the 44 Magnum. As far as I'm concerned, the 44 Mag is the king of big bore hunting cartridges. And yes, again, 460 is great. Ask my boss how great 460 is. It worked on a Cape Buffalo, so I will never talk smack about 460. 500, I might talk a little bit of smack about, because the recoil is extremely excessive. Even out of our 8-inch Raging Hunter, it is still a hell of a lot of gun to shoot. 454 Casull is cool. The only beef I really have with 454 Casull was that it was specifically made to make 44 Magnum not the most powerful handgun in the world anymore. And with 454 especially, I don't think there's anything that you can really do with a 454 that you can't do with a 44 Magnum, other than, of course, shoot 45 Colt. That is probably the advantage of 460, actually, is that if you have a gun like the Taurus Raging Hunter chambered in 460 Magnum, you can shoot 454 Casull out of that gun and even 45 Colt rounds. If you have a 44 like I do, all I can shoot out of that is 44 Mag and 44 Special. But I am hard-pressed to think of a thing that I can't do with 44 Mag or 44 Special. Let's talk about projectile design now for the 44 Magnum. I've recently returned from a hunt in Africa where I was using a round made by Federal that uses Barnes copper hollow points. It's a 225 grain bullet, and this thing was an absolute sledgehammer on everything we shot with it. A fun anecdote from that trip, and it was my first trip to Africa, so there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And I intentionally went into it not wanting to know that stuff because I wanted to experience it as a first timer. A lot of times in my life, I've gone on trips or adventures and I've over prepared and I've sort of ruined the sense of magic. So to talk about the 44 mag, I told my professional hunter that I wanted to shoot a wildebeest with my handgun, a 44 Magnum. And he kind of made a face, and I didn't really understand what the face was about. But what I didn't realize at the moment was the reason why he made that face, and something I didn't know, is that wildebeest are notoriously tough animals. They actually refer to them as the poor man's buffalo. Had no idea. The other thing that I didn't know was that on that particular area that I was, wildebeest was the animal that most commonly would get wounded and then run off and never be recovered due to either poor shot placement or it just being a tough old bastard. So then to this guy who is a professional hunter and has been hunting in Africa basically his whole life, some random guy rolls up with a handgun and says, "Oh yeah, I want to shoot one of the toughest antelopes in the world with a pistol." He must have thought I was nuts. And what's funny is that if I had known how tough a wildebeest was, what its reputation was, and all of that, I never would have tried it with the handgun. But I didn't know, and that gave me an advantage. So we go out and we're hunting and we're spot and stock hunting. So we would drive and we would see a wildebeest, we'd get off the truck and we'd try to creep up on it and get a shot in on it, right? And we did that for a day and didn't get any shots in. And so finally we get up on one and we're about 66 yards away, about 66 yards. We used a laser rangefinder. We were exactly 66 yards away. We get up and we're 66 yards away and I have a shot and I take the shot and the Barnes bullet in the federal load goes through one shoulder, through a lung, through a heart, through the other lung, and basically comes to rest on the other side of the wildebeest's shoulder. It runs 10 yards and drops like a rock. And from that moment on, I was completely sold on 44 Magnum as the best handgun for everything. And I think that's an experience thing because I had such a positive experience with it. But what that really showed me was the power of the 44. And now you're going to tell me that 454 is better? Well, maybe. 460 again, definitely better. No hate to the 460 mag, no hate to the 500 mag. But I think what the lesson I took away from that was that with something like the 44, there really is, you can really do most things with the 44 Magnum. And the nice thing about the 44 Magnum and why it would be my go-to for a big bore hunting handgun is the incredible variety of bullets that are available for it, right? I was using a 225 grain copper hollow point. You can again go all the way down the spectrum to 44 specials and have something very, very light. You can go all the way up from that 225 grain copper hollow point up to some of the crazy loads from our friends over at Buffalo Bore, where they're using a 360 grain hard cast bullet that goes, through 3 brick walls in a Cape Buffalo long ways and do a lot of really cool stuff with the 44 Magnum. So for me, in my personal opinion, and that is entirely my personal opinion, the best big bore hunting revolver cartridge is 44 Magnum. Now, last, let's talk about these guns here real quick, and we'll go back to the Heritage Rough Rider. We talked about this a little bit. Why do I like something like this for small game hunting or a kit gun? It's very light. All right. If I'm small game hunting or if I'm hunting something else with a rifle, but I want to have a small game gun in case I see a squirrel or a rabbit or something that I want to pop, I don't want to be carrying a ton of weight around, right? This, even with the 6-inch barrel with a good holster, I could carry this all day and not really notice the weight or be particularly bothered by it. And since it's a 9-shot, I don't feel any reason to carry extra ammo for it because I don't think I'm going to be shooting 20 or 30 small game animals, right? 9 shots of 22 Magnum, perfect. Moving on to the 357, this is pretty much what I would use if I was going to hunt with a 357 Magnum. A medium frame double action 6-inch revolver like the RM66 or some of the Taurus 66 models would be really, really good for that. We make a Raging Hunter in 357 Magnum, and I wouldn't go with that for one reason, and it's because these are lighter. Again, weight is a factor, especially if you're not sitting in a tree stand. If you're sitting in a tree stand, weight's less of a factor, but if you're spot and stock hunting, these guns get heavy, they drag you down. you start to get tired of carrying them. And also with a lighter gun like the RM66, what I can do with this is, again, carry this as a backup. If I'm rifle hunting with something else, but I want to have a capable, powerful handgun, a 6-inch 357 Magnum or even a 4-inch 357 Magnum carries very easily in a holster and makes a great option for that. It's nice and light, but heavy enough that I can manage heavier 357 Magnum loads. And then moving on to the big bore. When I am hunting with something like the Taurus Raging Hunter in 44 Magnum, this is my primary. There's no rifle. This isn't a backup. This is the gun that I am hunting with. And it's good because this gun's quite heavy. The Raging Hunters weigh a lot, but that weight's important. When I'm dealing with 300 grain hard cast bullets, heavy recoiling 44 Magnum loads, I want the gun to be heavy. I want it to be ported because that weight and those ports help manage the recoil. I don't think 44 Magnum recoil is all that bad, especially out of this gun, but it's also not something that I really want to be beating me up. And I don't want in my head, as I'm prepping this trigger to shoot at an animal, to be thinking about the recoil in advance of it. All I want to be thinking about is, oh, put that dot on his shoulder. He's not moving. If he lifts his head up, we're rolling the trigger, bang. That's what I want my thought process to be like. I don't want it to be, oh God, this is going to be so loud. The recoil is going to be so terrible. Oh, it's going to be so awful. And that's why I think that 44 mag is also kind of the perfect choice for this, because it's going to beat you up less than 454 or 460 and certainly 500 Magnum. But those are great cartridges that have their own niche. But again, for me, it's hard to beat the 44 Magnum, and I honestly think that it's hard to beat the Taurus Raging Hunter platform as a hunting handgun. Because if you look at the features on this, this is the 6.75-inch barrel. We also make this gun with an 8-inch barrel. We make it in 460 with a 10-inch barrel. I don't need to do anything special to get this gun ready for a hunt. If I want to hunt with the iron sights are good and they're adjustable. If I want to hunt with an optic, it has a rail on it, so I don't need to drill and tap it to add an optic or anything like that. I can literally just take this American Defense mount with the Aimpoint Acro and go, pap, click, zero it, and I'm done. I've done all the work I need to be ready for my hunt. And in fact, that's what I did to take this gun to Africa, was I just plopped it on there, got settled on some bags at 25 yards, shot a couple of groups, and I was good to go. The other neat feature on the Raging Hunter that I think makes it really optimal for handgun hunting is that we use this dual lock system. This dual lock system means that it can take cartridges that operate at pressures that would blow other lesser revolvers apart, okay? We can run the hottest 44 Magnums that your heart can desire in this gun. We can run the hottest 454 Casuals, and obviously we have bigger guns that run 500 and 460, and it's thanks to this double lock system that we can actually run those super hot chamber pressures. I think the madmen at Buffalo Bore make a 44 Magnum Plus P. You can run it in this gun. It's going to hurt because it's got a lot of recoil, but you could run it in this gun. So to review what we've talked about today, we've kind of gone through a list of my favorite hunting cartridges. Every cartridge I've talked about today is something that I've actually shot something with, all the way from a woodchuck to a wildebeest. But if you have other cartridges that you like, that's great. If you're one of the guys that prefers the 17s for small game, I love the 17s. I just prefer the 22 mag. If you think that you would rather have a 10 mil for your medium game, that's fine. I like 10 mils. Taurus makes the TH10, and it is an awesome DASA 10 mil semi-automatic pistol. And if you think that's what you want to take to the field with you, go for it. The 10 mil is great. I just prefer the 357 Magnum. And for big game, if you're looking at me and you're going to say, Caleb, I really like 454 Casual. It's just the one for big game for me. Fantastic, man. I'll never hate on people for carrying a 454 Casual or a 460 or a 500. But for me, 44 mag is always where it's going to be at for big game. And maybe that's just how I was raised. Maybe it's a combination of reading Elmer Keith articles and watching Dirty Harry as a kid. But I don't think that you can beat a 44 Magnum as a big game handgun. But regardless of what you think about my cartridge choices or your cartridge choices, the one thing that I do want to take away from this video is that handgun hunting is fun. It's great. If you've only ever rifle hunted, if you've only ever done hunting with a long gun, I strongly encourage you to go out, get yourself a Taurus Raging Hunter, and try a handgun hunt. I think that you will be challenged, you will be excited, and most importantly, you'll have a great time.